Good evening and welcome to the Warrant and Finance meeting of April 8th, 2019. First thing that I want to bring up, or the first thing that I want to make sure that everybody's aware of, if there's anybody that has any comments that they would like to make, you must go to the podium. You can't make comments from the floor because the sound system doesn't pick it up. And when people try to watch, they can see that somebody is speaking, but they don't necessarily hear what people are saying. So we're going to try to hold true to that. I'm not restricting anybody from making a comment or asking a question, etc., but I do request that you use the podium so that it can be heard. With that said, I believe we're going to start with the APAT individual tonight.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Mike.
I heard your concerns. I want to clarify and clear up the issues. As far as additional equipment needed, the issues with the audio that you experienced or didn't hear clearly previously was due to a production process. I had at a couple of the meetings, a microphone wasn't set up like on the podium or wasn't directly in front of a certain speaker. And I found a tweak to adjust the audio to enhance voice and make it really loud and crisp. Assuming that would be a excellent enhancement globally, I started doing that production through all productions without good audio quality. Only to discover, especially downstairs where the room is so small and the audio bounces so much, it caused a lot of crackling and essentially is making the audio too hot. So I adjusted those videos that you had concern over the audio levels back to the normal production process, and they sound crisp, or loud enough and clear enough to understand the communications being said. So another issue is a lot of times the setup. A microphone would be misplaced off the podium, or a microphone would be pushed aside between a few speakers. And all of our setups are dynamic. They're always different. People don't always sit in the same spots. Microphones aren't always set in the same place specifically. So adjusting to that can be a little challenging. So those are the main issues for your audio. The 2018 town meeting mentioned the audio is terrible, and it is terrible, I agree. I originally set up the audio, did a sound check, was confident that the sound was going to be good, and walked away. I don't know who or what, I'm not blaming anybody, went in there and adjusted any of the dials. But again, it's a dynamic environment where we're using the school's equipment and the school sound system. And you've got the maintenance guy setting up tables and chairs and also maybe dialing in the audio to do a sound check. It's hard to say what happened on that one, but our last town meeting we just had recently is crystal clear. So those are what I have to say. I feel like it is more of a staff training and a production process than it is more equipment needed.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
When I posted that we were having our meeting tonight, someone on WhatsApp actually said that they were concerned about the sound because there seemed to be buffing. Are you aware of that?
Buffing or buffering, I'm guessing?
Yeah, that's what she called it.
That's probably their internet connection. It's because their internet connection is not fast enough to spool up and pull down the data fast enough to watch it as the video is,
Sounded like she was watching it on live cable.
oh,
So would that be on your end? or-
I don't know. I've checked it. It sounds just as it does on the channel on YouTube and on the digital videos I have. So was it the last meeting she's claiming?
Yeah, I believe she said it was the last meeting.
All right, I'll have to double check that then.
Is she the only one? Is she the only one that mentioned it?
She's the only one that mentioned it.
Warrant and Finance, they aren't live, but they are, I can verify.
Thank you.
I have some data here too. I know you had concerns about having undesignated fund.
Take turns, it's fine.
Thank you, Mike.
I've kept track of the budget and expenses since I've started this, I took over the station. Okay, use this one. So the first graph you see in front of you, I gave you the simplified version. It's got all of the green bars of revenue that we receive from the franchise agreement. It has ranged from $40,000 to $42,000 dollars annually. It's usually in the 41,000 range. The red bar is expenses. And as you can see, for the 2011, 2012, there was a large jump in expenses. That's when I bought the initial equipment and started the initial budgeting processes. The 2015 to 16 range, that's when we bought the new digital camera. And you can see the spikes correlate. And as far as the unexpended values, the past couple years we have had a spike in unexpended expenditures. But I foresee with my calculations, if you look on the back page, at a 4.5% franchise agreement, we will, instead of having $40-ish thousand revenue, we'll have a $35-ish thousand revenue. My budget is roughly right on target. Yeah.
Chairman, may I?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mike, when did, was it 215 or 216 that the selectmen realized that they could spend freely from those funds without, what year was that? You remember offhand?
No, I don't. I feel like it was,
That's all right.
it was like 13 or 14 perhaps.
Right,
I think it was early on
Yeah,
is when the undesignated fund balance was rolled back into the public
right, okay,
offset.
all right. That's what I was thinking, but I just wanted to
Yeah,
correlate that with this, so.
It was soon once after I took over, and the committee disbanded, I believe, is when the undesignated fund was pushed back into to offset taxes.
But your budget was never cut, the board never cut your budget for that purpose, or still,
Yeah,
I just want, make it clear that you still were able to put forward the budget that you requested, and they didn't make cuts to it, so they weren't doing it for the purpose of having money roll over.
I understand
I know,
that,
I just wanted to make
how
it
money was
clear the way that it was asked.
Yeah, that, and I just, the undesignated fund thing is a concern at $20,000, obviously, and it should be. But I understand why it occurred, and I was just trying to correlate that with, that's all.
Mike, can you, the town meeting of March 6th, it's not on the website. I mean, it's not in the YouTube thing, you know,
I believe it is. It might have been pushed up a little
March
late.
6th?
Yeah, I believe it is on the website.
Oh, I thought it wasn't there. And the first, I wasn't here for the first Warrant and Finance Committee, and that never got up either, that I could see, because I never, and I just want to clear up the franchise fee. It was mentioned that the franchise fee, people that on the internet, that just have internet only, pay a fee too. They pay a fee too, but it's a network recovery fee, not a franchise fee. Only the people that have cable TV, broadband is not included in the franchise. So
Correct.
your budget is being funded by the people that get
Cable,
Atlantic broadband, cable TV.
right.
Right.
That's correct. Yeah, if my calculations are accurate, we shouldn't have a ton of undesignated funds, but I could be wrong. It could be anywhere between 200 to 2,000, depending on population and subscribers.
One other question, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Absolutely.
Consolidated, are they bringing cables to town? I see them putting up new cable.
No, we had a conversation with you saw him putting up new cable.
Yep. They
Okay.
bring new cable all the way out to Horns Pond.
No, that's
I
the
don't know whether it's, what it is.
I stopped and asked, it's fiber.
fiber.
It's fiber. That's what my perception is there.
36, any other Warrant and Finance.
You did that.
Those are all up there?
Glad to hear that.
I double checked.
Really glad to hear that.
Yeah, fiber is a different thing. The infrastructure to pull cable into this town and establish a headquarters to do the broadcasting, there has to be a profit for them to come here to do that. And they wouldn't come in here, based on a vote from a town committee requesting them. They need to see profit. They're, a private entity that needs,
Well, they're also advertising that high-speed, they are going to make available high-speed advertising up to, or not high-speed advertising.
The internet?
High-speed internet up to, it's 20 download speed. And I don't know if that ad that I saw is applicable to Acton yet, but I see this happening and just wondering how you could fill us in on it.
yeah, I have it at my house.
Okay, well, we'll find out.
It's because
good
we
time.
have the infrastructure in place where I live.
Yeah.
They were part of Time Warner Cable. They bought out Time Warner Cable. Now they have the infrastructure in place to just plug their equipment in. They have to lay down new cables and put a new central office or location in to feed the equipment and their pipe and their bandwidth. Like I said, if they find that it's profitable to come to Acton, they would. They lay fiber on an individual basis, like they run it to the school or the library, because we're going to be paying for that annually. That is always a profit right there. It doesn't require, a central hub of infrastructure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes, Dennis?
This isn't a reflection on you, Mike. You're just the one running the show now. The original intent was the money that was brought in for the franchise fee was to put out TV to the taxpayers so they could tape the meetings and school events and whatever they saw fit. And it was the intent to build the station, expand the station. One place, I don't know what has been done, but there was supposed to have taken money and expanded the station into the school. And hopefully get some of the kids started into that type of stuff like they do in Sanford. 'Cause they got, as you know, they got quite a program in Sanford. So when the selectmen decided to take this money that wasn't spent during the year to offset taxes, that was not the intent when this agreement was made with MetroCast to set up the TV station to begin with. Just to give you a little bit of history of why people like me don't like this money going into the undesignated fund balance to offset taxes, because even though now we've got a new contract with Atlantic Broadband, the basic premise of the intent was to expand the program, and especially to get more school kids involved, to promote this stuff. Like now, I mean, basically, you have two people that's been filming meetings for many, many years, and I mean, I'm glad they do, and they don't get a lot of money for doing it. But I just think the way this it's been turned in this year here, you don't project much money left over, which I understand. But my argument is that this money should be kept in the APAT account for expansion if need be, replacing of equipment. I mean, if you look at this budget, basically, there's really not much in there for improvements. You know, it's basically pay and.
Break fix, yeah.
Basically, I mean, you might have a little bit in there, but it's not enough to really do any expansion. It's more to maintain what you already have. And that's been my concern. And again, it's no reflection on you. It's what the selectmen have chosen to do. We have asked them to change it this year, regardless of what their fund balance is. I'm not sure yet. We got the new warrant tonight. I'm not sure what they've decided to do. And the other thing that I understand what you're saying about the meetings that are downstairs, but I honestly believed with your capabilities, there's a way to make it work down there. Most times people don't have much trouble hearing what I have to say, even if they have the mic on the other side of the table, but there are people at meetings that speak a lot softer than I do, and I understand the problem of getting everybody so you can hear what they say. But the meetings downstairs especially have been a problem with voice. It doesn't, you don't have to answer anything. I just wanted to put out there that I think you're capable of fixing it myself, but.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, the production process caused the inability to really understand or hear anything that was happening down there. I was cranking the audio way too hot, and the voices were coming out crackly. I take responsibility for that. I adjusted all the videos that I recall and noticed that happening on, back to the standard production process. So you can hear most voices, and things are clear. And we do have the technology to pipe a mic down there. But I think you've experienced it down there. It's really tight, especially if you've got people joining your meetings. And there isn't a lot of electrical outlets or setup area. So there's the concern of tripping over the cabling and the wires, which is a concern. But, you know, we do have the technology to, you know, hook up a microphone and the equipment, but lacking the adequate space and area to do that. But it's possible. And as for the undesignated fund, in the last budget printout Michelle gave me, she usually gives me one every few months, there was a line on there that I haven't seen before, which was undesignated fund balance. So I don't know if they're planning or preparing to do a rollover into that line or not. I haven't heard directly from the board on their decision on that. So that may be in the works.
Well, hopefully it stays where it was intended to be.
And I have spoken to, I was going to say, Atlantic Broadband. I have spoken to the previous franchise on the aspect of putting a channel or station in the school. And it is a possibility, being a public education government service. The only thing we lack, that Sanford doesn't lack, is the resources that they have. The high school, and they have, you know, kids going to high school with the ambition to do TV production. It's not as easy with a small population of Acton to pull that off. I did it in the past. I started a Acton channel for the students to put together a news broadcast. It's challenging, to say the least, and a lot of work.
No doubt it probably is.
It is. But it is a possibility and something to look into for the future.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Tom?
I'd like a little clarification here. I was part of the history of getting the contract signed and implemented in the town, and then I lost track of it. And I did not understand that the purpose, that a part of the purpose of the way the contract ended up was to involve the students, okay? I had no understanding of that at all. So I'm learning, okay? I was talking about the designated, undesignated fund balance resulting from our accepting and the fact that the town was actually taxing for it. That's interesting, and I think it deserves further exploration. Do you have any of those contracts or any of that agreement material that
I have.
You have it?
It's all, yeah, it's open to the public. When I did do the research, there were some stipulations involved.
Go ahead.
Okay. The stipulations were that you had to run, from my recollection, your station has to run consecutively without repeat. So we'd have to run 24/7.
Okay.
Meeting after meeting without
Yep,
repeat.
yep, yep.
And consecutively. So we have to meet certain like minor criteria in order to get a second, essentially fiber connection pulled to the school to establish a school operated station.
Could you let us know sometime in the future what those stipulations were and what the obligations were at that time, so that
Under new
we can
contract,
consider-
There aren't any. There aren't any.
any stipulations?
Not regarding that. So I guess a couple of things. So the Board of Selectmen at the time that signed the first contract with Atlantic Broadband or MetroCast at the time, just like a lot of selectmen, they had a lot of conversations, and Dennis is absolutely right about what they could do with it and what they should do with it, but that was never part of the contract. That was, as selectmen change and people change and staff change, those ideas get passed. Some they follow up on, some they don't, but there was nothing in the contract. Mike's right, though. They are public, the old one, but there's nothing between the town and Atlantic Broadband or MetroCast that said what the selectmen had to do with it or anything like what Dennis is referring to. That's more morally what he was saying, as the selectmen talked about at that time. But that contract has expired. We're on to a new one. And I just want to touch on the undesignated fund balance. So I want to touch on two things. So in regards to the contract, there's nothing in there that ties the town to doing any of those great ideas that might have been mentioned in the past. You know what I mean? That was just what different selectmen said over the years. But the Board of Selectmen just talked about the undesignated fund. Probably 2 weeks ago, this came up right after one of your Warrant and Finance Committee meetings. I brought it back to them. I told them of your concerns, and they decided to leave it the way that it was for two reasons. One is because they believe that it was a small amount of money. It's hard to track exactly what it's going to be, but the flip side of this, and Mr. Murray has mentioned this, is that, remember, you have this group of people that are paying their franchise fee, okay? And they essentially should be the only ones that should be able to see Channel 26. So by taking the leftover money, that is helping everybody that's able to see it through YouTube, so they feel like that should help the tax break, since everybody is really getting a piece of the channel.
Thank you.
That's what the conversation was. And, going back, was it 5,000, 7,000, it was different amounts, but at this point, he thinks he has it down to about 1,000. The other thing that Michelle mentioned last week, which you and I haven't had a chance to talk about, is that she could reword the article with the selectmen's approval, that instead of raising and appropriating the money, we could just take it right out of the revenues that come in.
Right.
But by doing that, what if 15% of people drop Atlantic Broadband over the next few months? He's got this budget, now he's not going to have enough money, so it's going to have it's going to have the opposite effect on it. So leaving it that way, getting it as close to what he can guess that 4.5% is the best bet. Throwing a little bit back into undesignated fund is only lowering the taxes for everybody that gets to utilize the channel. The other option is put it towards, capital improvement account, take it off YouTube so that only the people paying the fee get to see it. So it's kind of a 50-50 on,
I didn't mean that it was in the contract.
oh, okay, that's how I took it.
What I meant was, there was an agreement, when the TV was first set up, MetroCast gave us all that equipment.
Yep,
And that was through negotiations.
Right.
And when the TV station was built, that was the
10,
intention.
yep,
of
with those selectmen at that time.
And with the cable committee.
Right, and I don't disagree with you at all.
And
A
it
lot of
was
things are
changed.
discussed and then changed, absolutely.
And so that's all I was saying, was the original intent was, this was what was gonna happen.
Yep, and,
And it's changed.
yeah.
And I don't agree with some of the changes.
And those are great things to bring up to the Board of Selectmen, because unfortunately Mike doesn't have any real
Right.
authority over that, but it's good topics for the selectmen to kind of maybe get them to
That's what I
look
told them,
back.
it was all on the selectmen.
Thank you.
Okay,
Carol?
so there's a couple of things when it comes to the cable. Mike is right in a sense that he saw you had to have the 24-hour streaming. That was in order to utilize Channel 15, to open up the second channel.
Right.
So in order for them to allow us to use it, you had to have enough programming.
Which would
And
be
that's
the
where you read
schools,
that.
right, which would be
Because
the
I
schools
remember
part.
that. And as far as Tom's question about the channel and not knowing everything that was involved with the channel, you have to kind of go back to the fact that it's a PEG channel.
Yep.
Public access, education, which isn't necessarily the school, educating the public and government, it's a three-pronged thing. I think you do a great job, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I agree.
Anything
Thank you,
further?
Carol, for,
All right.
Well, I just have, this might all be mute in the future. I don't know if there's on September 25th, 2018, there was a federal action that would allow cable entities in-kind contributions to be part of the franchise fee. So if it says in there, this is from the MMA, it says that it might end up doing away, absorbing the franchise fee. If they're gonna take an in-kind thing, because they give you the cable here, they're gonna say, okay, well, we're gonna take that off.
I did hear about that. It hasn't happened yet.
No, but I mean, it's,
could.
that's, yeah, it's,
One
so,
One of the other things that I forgot to say was that I know you don't have any control over where the selectmen put the money that you have left over, except for, I've looked through what you have for accounts, and I mean, you carry a 0 for capital expense last year and this year. It would be nice to have some money set aside if the switch broke, or if something major, went in the studio, that you would have a capital, even if it's a couple $1,000s, fund that you could draw from to fix that.
I made that request myself.
Okay.
Not this year.
Not this year, but in the past.
Yeah, I just think that that's what the intent was for the leftover money. What originally was, anything left over would go into this, because MetroCast gave us that equipment once, they're not gonna give it to us
No,
again.
and that switch is $10,000. So
Yes.
if that breaks,
The
I
channels.
was told that I'd have to go to the board and do a vote, taking that out of the town's funds,
If the emergency happens.
if the emergency happens, correct.
Anything else? Thank you very much. We greatly appreciate your appearance and all the information that you've given us. And I don't have anything else for you.
All right, guys, thank you.
thank
Thanks,
you.
Mike.
Have a good night.
Drive careful, Mike.
Yes, please. Do drive carefully. Okay, next one up is going to be the forester, I believe. Get your questions in order.
Steve Bodkin, Town Forester. Fire away.
One of the first questions that I had for you, Mr. Bodkin, was, there was some references made about, when I read your letter and some of the presentation that you had made on Saturday, that you offer support to the code enforcement and the planning board. And I was just wondering, what's the frequency of that?
Well, it really does depend upon the year. This year, it's probably just been 2 or 3 meetings a course the last year. Previously, when we had gone into the code really specifically, we're still trying to get underneath of compliance with what they call statewide standards. Acton is trying to become one of the state is trying to standardize all the timber harvesting. That way loggers that do work in the area all have the same regulation from town to town, rather than every town working them up on their own. So there was a stretch there last year where it was probably 10 meetings across the course of a year, plus, views outside, tours out in the woods when we were talking about different things like, what does this term mean? Or what happens about the designated wetlands? Is this a wetland? Is this not? Long-winded way of saying that it really depends upon what's happening within the code regulation of the year. So this year, it's only been 2 or 3, whereas last year it might have been 10, 12 even.
Yeah.
But again,
Obviously, the stipend is pretty small for this
Yep.
position.
Yep.
No, it's not that, I'm questioning. It's just, I saw in the warrant how they're eliminating, a lot of the forestry portion of the
Yep.
ordinance, that's what they're looking to do. So it's like, well, what is the forester gonna do now?
Right, well,
that was
pretty
the-
good. I had written a letter back to the selectmen a week or so ago, and I
Yeah.
think that might have been forwarded to you guys. I
Yeah.
think that outlines things pretty well, in that, in my mind, it's kind of a multiple pronged kind of an idea. There's an education component to townspeople, plus education to the town. For example, if we do go to statewide standards, let's say we are now adopted and brought into the fold of the state ordinances, you're now not going to have Ken as updated on any of the forestry codes if or when they change at the state level either. So if that's the case, then he has no enforcement capability nor any education in that realm. So now what does the town do? You now have to call Augusta, which may or may not put you in contact with the local forester in Alfred, and how long that may take to receive information back to the town should something happen on the town's behalf and need to be answered, or on a landowner in town. So I guess the long story short is that between, the rewriting of code that we have, where I get consulted upon basically for education to the town, you now have education to the people of the town. We have 3 or 4, depending upon whether you call Mary Grant a town lot. So town forest has probably a little over 300 acres in it of working forest land between the town farm road lot, the Hebo road lot, Goat Hill, Mary Grant, these pieces out there. And to give you an idea, for example, the town farm lot that I just did the inventory and submitted the plan for had over $1,000 per acre in timber on it. So for example, you can also look at the town forester as someone, this is really overstepping the comment, but to give an illustration, if you were a lawyer working for the town, you have a small amount of money that has that lawyer working on your behalf at all times and is interested in your town's best interest. So the town could say, I do walk on the town forest yearly, report back to the town forest committee and all these things on the different town forest and their status. But if you've got that asset out there that's worth this much money and it's growing and it's healthy or it's not, or what's happening, who's taking care of it and who's watching over it every year? So there is something that could be happening in that realm too.
Do you
So we
have-
do have multiple.
Do you have any role at all in the harvesting of private forests?
I do, yep. I'm an independent consulting forester
Okay.
that lives in town, and that's why working within the town, again, the number for what I charge out when I'm doing private work is roughly about 1 day's, the stipend for the town is roughly about 1 day's time of me billing out to a private, landowner somehow. So, but again, I'm a townsperson, I volunteer a lot of time within the town forest committee, to these meetings. It's not really me looking necessarily to number and saying it's worth it or it's not. It's volunteer time in my mind. But we do have to have some level of oversight to these town forests, and there is a bit of an official capacity to it. And I think having some number attached to that, to have my name be called the town forester, does beget a level of responsibility where I am working in the town's best interest, should that interest be in conflict with someone else's. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yes.
So if I were a lawyer, I would have to be one that's saying, nope, I'm already working on behalf of the town. You'll have to go elsewhere, or I can give you advice, but my interest is in working for the town. So again, that's kind of where having that little retainer, so to speak, has my ear to the ground and me doing work on town's interest. at all times, even if it's not billable at that time.
You explain it much better than your letter, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
I appreciate that.
Yes.
Hi.
Sure.
The charge of this board is to look after the people's money going over the budget.
Sure.
And this increase that they've proposed is a 100% increase over the, what was done before.
Okay.
I'm not sure he's aware of the increase. I suggested that because we lost 2 stipend positions this year, one being the animal control officer, which was really difficult to replace because of, can you hear me okay? Because of the pay. We took care of that at a special town meeting. The second one was the EMA director, which we, the positions got too many qualifications for the type of stipend we're offering. So looking at the other 2 stipend positions, being the health officer and the
Town forester.
town forester, I thought we better increase these before we lose them. This position started in 2002. It has not been increased since then. The health officer started in 1998 and has not been increased since then.
Thank you, Elise.
That is correct. I can vouch to that because I set that $500 back in 2002.
Yep. You were the man back then, Tom.
What's that?
My question to you is,
Thank you, Elise.
do you feel as though that you should be warranted? Because I know at one of the previous meetings, you said that, you were acting as a lawyer that's on retainer.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's not a big amount of money, but I mean, we are responsible to the people, and I don't want the people to get, think that we're not looking after their money.
No, are you asking me about what a dollar figure would be, or are you asking me, am I
I'm
worth?
asking if,
Basically, your stipend's going from $500 to $1,000.
Okay, well, again, the number that was put on that was a selectman's board
I
number.
understand that. I'm asking
But-
your feeling. I
so,
mean,
and like I said-
it's evident that nobody's asked you.
Right. No, and again,
Steve, can I reframe
the best way to put it again is that the previous amount was 1 day's time.
Can I reframe the question for Steve? I think it'll put it in a little bit better perspective.
Yep.
What was your hourly billing rate in 2002, and what is it now? You remember?
$30 to 70.
How much?
$30 an hour to 70.
Self-explanatory, I think.
Any other questions?
I do it wrong.
Yes, Dennis?
The reason, Steve, I'm the one that brought this up was just because of going from 500 to 1,000.
Yep.
And I didn't believe at the time, honestly, that it was something that you asked for. And I just wanted to put it out there that that came from the selectman's office. The town, if the state has their way, as you know, is going to be out of the forestry business completely, as far as supervision. We just went through this on the planning board, and we went through everything that had anything to do with forestry, and you'll see it in the warrant, to go to town meeting to take it out of our zoning.
Well, hold on, back up just a second. I want to make sure that I understand you clearly. The state, we are getting out, I think you said the state.
The town.
The town is getting out of the forestry business, yes, exactly. Yep.
So, and your explanations of why we need a town forester, I accept. We do have town lands and things like that. But you also know that what's happened in town, because code enforcement, first off, has no authority over what's being cut because he's not a forester. So if it went to court, they'd just laugh at him. The second thing is, in this town especially, has been hit very, very hard in the last 10 years. And the town doesn't know anything about it, the way they cut forests today. At least 2 to 4 weeks after the property's cut and the loggers are gone out of town.
Mm-hmm.
and there's been quite a few violations around town, especially with the wetlands, especially with some of the bigger loggers. And so there just be a big discrepancy in what a resident can do, and these foresters come in, not the foresters, I'm sorry, the loggers come in, and they take their skidders and they go through swamps and brooks and destroy a lot of the natural, with the woods, you know, and the environment. And, but I do support you getting your money. I am the one that brought this up to begin with. I just want to put out there that this is happening, and it's happening constantly.
Sure. Again, I think that a case can be made on the surface. One could say, the town's not into the forestry business, why do we have a town forester that's being paid? That's a very straightforward, right on the surface question to be answered.
And that is what I asked.
And again, if you look under the surface just a little bit, if you no longer have anyone that is in the enforcement game within the town, that means the town has no interest or defense. Now, the town forester is not, I am still not, for example, a code enforcement officer. I don't go after people, I'm just I'm a consultant for the town, essentially. But again, if you were to have changes in regulations at the state level, if you were to have inevitably, you know, I'm gonna use the same kind of overall analogy. You know, the logging crew shows up next door. You know darn well that Ken is still getting the phone call about the blah, blah, blah that's happening right next door. He is no longer going to be able to answer any questions. He is simply going to say, call Augusta. And to me, I do think, and again, this is where, while I'm not, I always called it a tree cop. If you were to be one that was working on behalf of the town, in contact with planning, warrant and finance, selectmen, town forests, and things like that, please feel free to pass me along for some of that education. Now, again, I'm not an enforcement person, but if all of a sudden enforcement goes from the town level to the state level, and who knows how quickly Augusta can do anything, to be honest. So if something can happen where, you know, Ken passes along my name and just says, here's the town forester, maybe he can answer some of your regulatory questions of what the rules actually are, that's something that I would gladly help take care of on behalf of the town. So not only, again, land management of town lands, the regulation process, which is not yet finished, even close, coming into statewide standards, the wording even in the warrant articles currently, you know, are being drawn up to try to get us closer. And the state seems to have that be a moving target a little bit as well through the years. And then again, just general overall townspeople education along the way. So again, the number that is placed on that worth is certainly up to the town. And, you know, again, I've given this time as a volunteer, but I do think that there's a number out there that does have this become more formal, and what that worth is certainly up to you guys.
Maybe 20 years from now, I'll be willing to double your pay again.
Mr. Chairman?
If it's you, Dennis, I doubt
Yes,
it
Tom.
highly.
Steve, how responsive, and this is a call for a gut response from you or
Yep.
maybe prejudicial, but how responsive is Augusta when we have concerns that you are familiar with that probably are legitimate? Are they responsive or not? And is this a case where we've let the industry get too much influence in the legislature to override?
No, here's the thing, Tom. I believe that the regulations are the way they should be.
Okay.
So there is the enforcement question of it, and then there is what the regulations themselves are is the question. I was very much at the forefront of making sure, or trying to push for, the standardization of the timber ordinances. We were all over the place within our own ordinances. They were conflicting. Someone who knew what they were doing, myself included, couldn't read our ordinance and make heads or tails. You could not abide by some of the regulations because they were self-conflicting. So with regard to the regulation itself, I am wholeheartedly pushing for statewide standards. As far as trying to say, do we or do we not have our eggs entirely in Augusta's basket, I think a little bit of safeguard wouldn't be a bad idea. And I'm not saying that as to say that they are going to allow the raping and pillaging of the town or anything like that, because remember, they are a regulatory organization, and their rules are the way they are, and I'm for them being that way. So if we're talking about, did Joe Blow logger down the road go into the wetlands, did he not? That's an enforcement yes/no kind of question, and they'll be fine with that. But if you're talking about, there's a big gap between, again, the call to, I hear the chipper next door to my house in the morning call that Ken is going to receive, and, calling up Augusta and having them forward a call back down to Alfred at best, and have somebody call and come down and have them quote state of Maine timber harvest ordinance to essentially the deaf ears of a townsperson who hears the machine running right next door and is worried. There's a very big gap in the education there. So, again, a little bit of maybe oversight's not the right word at the town level, but a liaison, I guess, or an interpreter or something. I don't know what, term you would put to the education that I might bring to that. But there's a big gap between, Ken as an enforcer, a town forester as an educator, and Augusta as an enforcer. A lot of space there.
Any other budgetary concerns regarding the town forester? Thank you, Steve.
My pleasure.
No
Thank you,
problem.
Steve.
Have a good night. I believe that leaves us with one more individual. Come on down.
Chief,
I don't even know
Good
which
evening,
one is
everybody.
new, which one's old now.
How are we all tonight?
We are,
We are.
we are.
The new one says
we
4.
made it here, we just have to make it home without
Yeah, right.
having you follow us.
I'm hoping to make it home myself.
Yeah, 4-8.
Soon.
This one. This is the new one.
I'm with you.
Thank you, Nick.
I got a hungry dog waiting to go home.
You got a hungry guy waiting to go home.
Well, yeah, that too. The two together is a bad combo.
Let me just find it.
I know I'm bad when I start getting into his treats.
There we are. Okay.
Carol, do you want to start?
Nope.
No, you don't want to
No,
start.
I don't.
Okay,
Let someone else start, please.
let somebody else start. I'm going to ask a real non-budgetary question,
Oh, boy.
just because I want to know.
Yes, sir.
Squad truck downtown Friday?
The squad truck or the utility truck?
The utility truck, the new truck, the Ford.
I wasn't here Friday, so,
Utility
but
Understand
slash
that.
squad.
it does get used for errands as well.
My concern is, why was it parked at Yankee Cutter, which is a hair salon?
I have no idea.
Maybe they had a fire.
I'm kind of curious. It's certainly, I have no objections to lunch runs being made, going to pick up parts.
I can assure you, nobody would have gone and gotten a haircut on duty.
Got,
So-
I'm just, it just.
But I will
begs-
certainly inquire of the crew that was on.
It just begs, my curiosity.
Yeah, I can assure you that haircuts on duty would not be acceptable. So
I've
if that's what it was, that's great. If it was, well, I'll find out though. I
How about
appreciate the
Dunkin'
heads
Donuts,
up.
Steve?
Well, coffee now, that's an essential.
Before it was at the hairdresser, it was at Dunkin' Donuts.
I don't have a problem.
Maybe they wanted to make sure they got a good coffee for the hairdresser to get a good cut. I don't know.
Maybe they spilled a
You
cup
see
on
the
their
point.
Lunch, coffee.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'll look into it though.
Those things
I
don't have a
agree with you on
problem.
that one. So,
All right, who's got a question?
I do.
Speak, Dennis.
Two, Steve, I asked you, that Saturday we met
Yep.
about a maintenance plan. Have you come up with one, attempted to,
so
on the building itself?
I can give you a run.
Buildings, rather.
So I can give you a pretty good rundown on the projects that I'll see coming up in the future. Obviously, like for instance, the actual station, the fire station is 20 years old now, and a lot of the equipment in it is original. So some of the things we're going to be looking at, for one, with that is you're going to be looking at a furnace replacement probably within the next few years. We've had it serviced several times over the last year, the year before, due to breakdowns, things like that. We do get it serviced, we do get it cleaned, but it's an old system, and it's really not big enough for our needs. It was probably state-of-the-art 20 years ago, or whenever it was installed, but at this point, it's probably going to end up needing to be replaced in the next couple of years, and you're probably looking at a price tag of somewhere around $20,000. Parking lot, is starting to need repairs over the next couple of years at least. Resealing, getting the cracks fixed and repaired. And one of the quotes we had on that was somewhere in the range of $7,000. That was just one quote thrown at us just to get a ballpark idea, so there probably could be lower, maybe, hopefully.
Did you shim that a few years ago, Steve, or just seal up the crack?
I think they just sealed up the cracks. Am I correct on that? Yeah, they just,
It was sealed.
was it sealed as well?
Yes, Deputy Chief Langley. Yes, we did do some crack sealing and everything. We did shim in front of where Engine 2 was parked, the front door by the main entrance and stuff there. So, and the chief is right. A bunch of you were fortunate enough a couple weeks ago to have a walk around out there and you see what we're dealing with. But it was that driveway, any pavement is a 30-year life cycle is what we plan on, and we're working our way up to it, so it's just...
Yeah, as long as we can keep with the repairs and the sealing and stuff, hopefully we can extend that, as long as possible. I know we've done some stuff with the weeds and the grass and things as well, coming up through the cracks, but they really need to be treated right, and filled, et cetera. One of my other concerns, it kind of came to a head last year when we were looking at an issue where we thought we possibly had a water leak. We didn't know where. We thought it could possibly be underground, could have been something to do with the well pump. But again, the well pump, you're looking at 20 years old on that, and that's pretty much the life cycle of a typical well pump, and you're looking at a few thousand for that. Not sure, hasn't failed yet, but down the road. The rescue building, obviously, I think you went through that the other day. There's a lot of repairs that need to be made in the rescue building, which, as much as I wish I had money to do so out of the regular budgets, we didn't. But that's something that, when I look at the list of priorities, do I need sheetrock to be replaced in a building that's part of the garage, where the trucks are parking, or do I need to put new equipment on the trucks that we're desperately needing as well? It's, you're playing that game of what's the priority. We really, with the fact that we have firefighters, that we sleep at the station now where we're staffed 24/7, it's pretty standard that it's code that you have a Plymouth vent exhaust system to recover the exhaust from the trucks. In this day and age where we're fighting our cancer concerns so extensively, and where it's so at the forefront, for us, our biggest cancer risk for us is every time those trucks start. A cold start on a diesel is the most toxic that the exhaust is on that vehicle till it warms up, and we don't have an appropriate system to recover that, to remove it. You're looking at about $65,000. Obviously, that's something that if you could find grants, you try to find grants for, but they really weren't approving much money for the Plymouth events through grants. At this point, they're starting to come around on that, but I still think it's something we may want to look at starting to plan for as time goes on for the fire station. Again, I said, the water damage repair from the old water leak they'd had at the rescue building before, you're looking at about $4,000 to repair all that. The generator we have at the station, which runs, obviously is our backup, for our EOC, which is where we run that center out of. We do the basic maintenance with it every year. Every time they come out, it's around $350. We also have annual service fees, which covers some of the stuff, but not all the stuff. We've had it fail twice this year, where they had to come out and do an emergency service, which had replaced stuff that wasn't covered under the normal contract. To do the major overhaul on that it truly needs, you're looking at about $2,200 to do that. So that's something that I was really actually kind of hoping on that one, if I have money left in that budget at the end of this year, coming into the spring, to be able to hopefully knock that out, because that's really essential. So I'm hoping to be able to do something with that this spring. The overhead doors, they're desperately in need of total service. We replace things, we get them serviced as much as we can, but to do the full service, it's amazing. You're still looking at a couple $1,000s to do that. These are the things that every year that goes on, the building's just getting older, and things that we need to try to catch up on. Hopefully this year, last year we were in dire need of some equipment. I caught up on some of the equipment last year, and I'm really hoping this year, if I have something left over, it's a little tighter this year than it was last year, so I don't know if that's going to be the case. But if we do, hopefully I can start trying to knock some of this stuff off in the spring, see what happens.
I mean, you should have I say you should, that's just my opinion. I mean, you should have a service contract with somebody to maintain those doors. I can fix them, you can fix them, Dave can fix them, Tom can fix them, but there's a big difference
Right.
between you or I up there.
Well, we do,
Professionally done.
yeah, we use overhead door, and I'll be honest with you, I've really never had the conversation as far as what they have as far as service plan programs for actually annual service contracts. We have them with every other company. We have them with our sprinkler company, our alarm company, our, well, I believe also the gas company. Pretty much every aspect of the things that can really hurt us, we do. The overhead doors is kind of, I think the one thing that's kind of slipped through the cracks over the years. You know, I've been there 3 years now, it's my fault as well, but luckily nothing major's happened. And unfortunately, a lot of times we don't really do anything until something major happens, but.
The other thing, Steve, that I agree with, depends what time of day it is, and I don't agree with, and that's $1 an hour across the board for everybody for wages.
Right.
And the reason being is, and people like me got a 2.8% raise this year. And last year was 1.7, and the year before that was 0, or whichever way it went. So to give these increases, because our town is, seems like more and more every year, being a senior citizen community, they're not seeing the rate increases that generally somebody says, you know, we need a 3% raise, or I mean, some of them are 5 or 7, but I also appreciate the fact that if you're only making $13 an hour, a 3% raise, I'd probably tell you to keep it. But if you're making $80,000, it's a lot more money.
Well, I can certainly understand your concern, and it's a legitimate concern. But the other issue that we have, it's like, for instance, I didn't take a raise this past year. These guys haven't had a raise in, as long as I've been here, I can't remember the last time their pay rates were adjusted. So when you look at $1 raise and it's been 3 years, even if you consider that 30 cents over each year, you know, we're just catching up. But my real concern is that the problem with running per diem fire departments the way we do is the per diem pool is so small. And then now, pretty much, with the exception of Shapley's 19 an hour for the medics, Lebanon went to 21 an hour, Wells is at 20 an hour, Alfred, Arundel, all these departments are all about 20 an hour. If we don't want to lose these people, because these guys are still getting raises on the other side, on these other departments, because of how tight the per diem pool is. There's just not enough per diems out there to fill everybody's shifts. There's guys bouncing department to department, but there's also guys that are being offered jobs to work in just those departments, and they're offering them more money to get them, to try to take them even away from us. If we don't do something to stay somewhat competitive, we're going to lose those per diem medics that we worked so hard to get. You know, we've created a good work environment. We've created good equipment. We've given them a good station, a supportive town. Those are important. But when you start seeing separation distances of $2 and $3 an hour between our pay and their pay, if they're working 30 to 40 hours a week in these departments, and they got families, how do they say no to that money eventually, you know?
Two more things I want to say, Steve, and I'll tell everybody I'll be done. What you're doing, as far as I can see, talking to my daughter-in-law, which is a nurse, the hospital's fighting like crazy over nurses because there's such a shortage.
Right.
And they just, this one particular hospital just come out with a $20 an hour bonus, plus time and a half if you'd work above and beyond your shift. So that shows you that there is quite a shortage out there, and a lot of these places are fighting over the people that are.
Right.
So I appreciate what you're saying there. The other thing is, I have to ask this, and my granddaughter is gonna be, whatever if I don't or if I do, but, you need to know this isn't gonna influence anything, but she's been taking stuff in high school.
Mhm.
She wants to be a junior
Firefighter, yep.
paramedic.
Paramedic.
Oh, paramedic,
And
yep.
she's been doing this stuff, and I told her that she can, join the Acton Fire Department and do this as a junior, and
How old is she?
she's,
She'll be 16 in September.
Well, see, I'll use this as the plug right now then to get this in there.
okay, I just want to put that out there, so I want some kind of.
All right, here's our commercial statement of the day. We just actually, because all our juniors had grown up, it happens, but we just recently started reinstituting the junior program with Captain Smith, Harold Smith, and we have 3 that are in it now, and we're looking to recruit more. So we really, that's really been the foundation of this department all along, is people coming up through. So if you, and they're eligible from the time they're 14 up through 18 to be juniors. So
It's a nice thing the vocational schools added. to
yeah, they got
that.
a really good program. So yeah, so certainly tell them, anybody that's interested, that's in that age
I'll
group,
send her up.
come see us. Absolutely. That's it for the commercial. Now on to business.
Is that it, Dennis?
I'm not gonna say any more.
Good. Tom?
First a thought, and then a quick series of questions here.
Sure.
We have a big roof over there. Anybody given any thought to putting solar panels on it?
A big roof for solar panels? Is that what you said? I'm sorry. I have
Yeah, we
to.
have a big roof over there.
Yes,
at
we
that
do
fire
have a
station.
big roof.
Yeah.
I have not had any, I haven't looked into that. Honestly, no. We did just this last year, one of the things that we spent $2,800 on out of maintenance, of course, was that efficiency main. And when they came in and redid all the lighting and made us completely green on the lighting, so hopefully that helps. But no, I have not had any, have not entertained or even been approached about that or thought of it myself, so.
Just a thought for the future and capital improvement, cutting our bills. Maybe we can generate something for CMP.
I think one of the things, I think one of the things I really need to stress, especially when you look at the list of projects, one of the things that I tried to get last year, I didn't put in this year because we were going for other needs as well, and I didn't know if there'd be support for it. But last year, I wanted to start a capital reserve fund for the station's building maintenance. I wanted to start it off last year at $5,000 and contribute every year till it got to whatever we determined as a group, you know, as a cap, to have those emergency funds for when the furnace breaks, when the wells break, when you got to dig up the yard to find water leaks in wintertime. And it ended up getting cut last year and not making it to town vote. I submitted capital lines for truck replacement. And, you know, I know the town has a lot of needs in like your concerns with the aging residents, especially trying to keep the tax rates low. The problem is if we don't start getting these capital lines up and running down the road when we have to make these purchases, do we want to be hit all in one year? Do we want to have to bond things where we're paying interest? Or do we want to plan appropriate over the 10 to 15 years so that we can have the monies there and be able to make the decisions at that point on how we need to spend it, but have it there to spend instead of having to bond and pay interest when we can have the monies there. I would have loved to have seen, when I first got here, we needed turnout gear and SCBA, which is in my capital line this year for the rest of the SCBA. I wanted to do, as much as we didn't want to do loans, there was a 5-year plan we could have done that we would have gotten the SCBA and the gear. And yes, we would have paid interest for those years, a low rate, but it would have set us up that if we'd agreed to every year put $25,000 into that fund, by the time 10 years came up, we needed more turnout gear, and then the 15 years came up, we needed more SCBA, you know, we'd have the money in those funds. We wouldn't have to worry about loans or where that money was coming from, and it wouldn't impact you as badly that year on the interest rate because it'll stabilize, obviously, as a repeat expense. I really think it's extremely important that we start setting up these funds and really start planning for the future because this stuff's just getting more and more expensive. And if we come to a year, for instance, that we need a fire truck and we've got a whole bunch of roads that went to heck that winter and we put it off 1 year, every year you put these projects off, you're talking, you know, like a 7% increase on what the cost of that vehicle is overall. These last couple of years have been really hard because the price of steel has gone through the roof. And they've gone up as much as 10%, over what they were the year before. Now, 7% on a $500,000 truck, you're talking somewhere in the ballpark of $35,000 more by wait until a year after. Not to mention then if you finance it on top of that, you could be looking by the time you get done buying the truck, $50,000 to $75,000 more for the truck than you could have if we'd have planned right and just bought it that year. So these are the things that I really want to make sure that we start addressing. Just to throw that out there.
Mr. Chairman?
You're speaking, Tom, I'm listening.
This is my one-liner to match Steve's. I agree a lot with what you're saying. I'm not agreeing about how to get it done, but I'm
Right.
agreeing that we need to start planning for it. And if I may, part of the problem here is we don't have a really, really good record of being able to distinguish between capital improvement and maintenance. The record is not
Right.
there, and it's not clear, okay, because they've been mixed. And this is why I am so careful about pushing
Right.
on this business of budgeting and making those words, separating those terms, so we can develop that history and move forward.
Regardless of, we all know that we've had disagreements over the years on certain issues, this or that or whatever.
Right.
But when you look at us as a group and as a whole, and what we're able to do now is that, well, for one, I think we're a little more comfortable with each other. It's a lot easier to talk to each other. But two, these conversations need to be had. We're all on the same team. We're all on the same boat of wanting to be best prepared for the future, to have the least impact on the community, to be able to provide and get the services that we need, the cheapest we can. And it takes all of us to do that. It's great that we have, a group willing to sit down and bombard you with questions, because if you don't understand where I'm coming from, how are you supposed to help get to where I see my vision is and where we need to go? Or how am I supposed to see yours? Sometimes you got to be cruel as far as being forward to do that. But I do think we're all on the same page, and I think we need to figure out that plan, regardless of how you word it, regardless of how you word what that fund is for, as long as it's encompassing to meet the needs that you're going to have, then I'm all for it. And I'm very much for planning for future. I hate getting caught unexpectedly with things. I really hate when my budget's going well and something happens and jams me up the rest of the budget year. Just as much as you probably hate seeing it.
I have a quick list of questions that I'd like to clear up, if I may.
Absolutely,
Thank
get
you.
it on.
I assume there are to be 16 sets of SCBA's now from what we talked about last year and this year, a total of 16
There
sets.
will be
Is that correct?
17.
There will be 17 sets,
17
correct?
sets.
Yep.
Okay. Assuming the 2 sets are required on any dispatch, how are they being distributed now between the sets of equipment that we have?
So at this point, we haven't actually purchased the new ones yet.
Okay, yeah,
We're
right.
still using the ones from last year that we put them through the testing and the servicing and all that to keep them in service. My goal was to not order them until we get closer to the new budget, before the old one goes, because then we can work it out with the company if it looks like it's going to fly. And I'm still waiting to hear on this micro grant that I filed too. I'm really hoping that they're going to come riding in on the last moment and I can call you all and say, hey, cancel that. We got the grant. But if I order them, I didn't want to order one set one year and order the other half of it the next year, because then you got 2 different years in time frames on these packs and you get standard changes in these years. I wanted them all to be consistent to when they can come in at approximately the same time.
My question was, we're going to have 17 sets.
Yep.
And again, assuming that any dispatch team has to have at least 2 sets on board, because you're going to not put any one person into a building or whatever.
Every truck has them.
Okay, that's the question.
Yeah, every
How are
truck.
they distributed?
You have 2 on the ambulance.
Okay.
You have 2 on the tanker. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on engine 1, 6 on engine 2. So every apparatus has, basically when you buy packs, you get them, every seat on the engine or whatever, you have it for every sitting position.
Right.
So you have them for the officer, all 4 tailmen, and then there's one in the compartment for the driver. So that's how you work it, so that the full crew would all have their air packs.
Okay, what's the life expectancy of a set?
15 years.
15 years? And do they come with bottles or not with
Yep,
bottles?
it comes with the pack, bottle, spare bottle, the masks, it comes...
You get 2 bottles?
Yeah, you get 2 bottles per pack, yeah. It all comes complete, and with
Okay.
a mask as well.
And with respect to the mask,
Yep.
the issue came up a number of years ago with respect to fits. So how are we dealing with?
Everybody gets fit tested annually. As a matter of fact, it's coming up soon. And pretty much everybody is a standard size. But then what we'll do is for the people that have a smaller size or a larger size, which is only a handful, if that, we'll order some of those sizes as well so that those people can be matched up with them.
Okay, so you have more masks than you have sets?
Correct.
Obviously, right,
Yep.
but you have something for everybody.
Right.
So how many extra masks do you usually have? Do you know? offhand?
Honestly,
Yeah, don't-
I'd say usually 4 or 5.
4 or 5 extras, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming our bottles that we're getting with these sets are the lightweight ones?
Yes, yep.
What's the lifespan on those?
Well, basically, those are the same. They just get hydrostatic tested every 5 years.
So, but they can be kept in service for up to 15 years, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, as long as they pass hydro, yep.
Okay, that's a
They can be
change
kept
then.
in service longer than that, as long as they're passing.
No, because
know.
per standard, the limit's 15 years per standard, so,
For a long time, it was like 3 or 5.
yeah, right.
Then they extended it, apparently. Used to be, when they were first introduced, it was like 3 years, then they,
Yeah, that was the hydro testing.
Yeah.
That was the old steel bottles, and the difference between the steel bottles and composite bottles. It used to be 3-year hydro, now it's 5-year hydro.
no, I meant the composite bottles were limited, their life expectancy, regardless of the hydro testing, was limited for 3 or 5 years, you had to replace them.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. We're good now, though.
Maybe before your time,
Yeah.
I've been around too long.
What else you got, Tom?
Okay, that was, okay. Hoses and appliances in Article 30,
Yes, sir.
what are we replacing? And,
So we've lost, over the last few years, we've lost a lot of LDH hose, large diameter hose. And we have engine 1, they're supposed to have at least 800 feet on them. We recommend they have at least 1,000 plus, just because of our rural situation. The tanker, because of how much we lost last year and the year before, the tanker is now down to 500 feet, and engine 1's down to 700
500
feet.
feet of large diameter?
Yes.
With 4-inch hose? Okay.
5-inch actually on that.
5-inch.
Yeah. So, 5-inch on that, 5-inch on engine 1, and then engine 2 has 1,400 feet of 4-inch. So, but, so my plan is to address that. We'd end up swapping, like, say, the tanker's 5-inch on, put that on engine 1 to get that up to the 1,200, and then I was looking at buying either 1,000 or 1,200 feet to replace on that, as well as hand lines, because we don't even have any spare hand lines on the rack. Everything we have is on the trucks. So we need to increase that as well.
I got a little information I just want to share with you guys. So in the spring of 2016, when I was the fire chief, as some of you may know, some don't know, the town is rated by an ISO rating. ISO rating. What that is that gives us a national standard for our fire rating. Every town has it, and this is how it falls. So in the spring of 2016, when I got the phone call from the corporate office down south, she faxed us a form, and I had to tell her what our trucks were, what the manufacturer was, what our pump test was, all this stuff, and how much hose we had, how much 5-inch hose we had, all of it. And that's where we get to our rating, and that's how the town gets their rating for the whole town. So saying that, in the first round of 5-inch hose that was bought, going back talking to the chief, former Chief Harold Smith, we figured that 5-inch is 29 years old.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Okay. The only reason why I remember that is we bought that when we bought engine
Bought the
2.
truck,
Tom,
right.
yes, Tom,
Truck, yep.
yep, Mr. Grover understands when we bought that, where it was a big push for the town and everything. So that life expectancy is probably well beyond where it is on that there. And then right around 2000, 2001, when we bought the Peterbilt, we moved into the station, we started buying some 4-inch hose. We bought some, but then we were also fortunate enough that Wells donated, was swapping their hose out. It was still we had it tested, so we got some of that, and we got some from Sanford. So the 4-inch hose, other than a few lengths that we bought, was donated to us. And that was, in the early 2000s.
That cotton jacket there, or was that a synthetic jacket?
This is
That,
synthetic
yeah,
jacket.
yeah, and everything.
The donated hose was a synthetic? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, so, and everything, so, and that's something that, myself, 3 years ago in front of the Budget Committee, I asked for a CIP program to start knowing this was coming down the road. Former Fire Chief Peter L. Smith and Harold, this is not new for us. We've always asked for a capital improvement program, and as Dennis has said, we've come to a crossroad in this town where we need to, we need to address certain things there. So it isn't all new. It's just that the things have starting to run out its age. So and everything.
That
But
5-inch hose for the Washington Street fire.
Yep, exactly.
That was
Yep.
like 2000 New
Yep.
Year's Eve.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I did a little research and everything. I just wanted to bring that information to you. So it isn't like it's, it isn't needed, because it is. And like I said, it all reflects to that rating, ISO rating. So that's something we need to keep in mind. So and everything. Yeah. So.
It's certainly, it's not going to remedy our long-term situation with replacing hose and things, but it's certainly going to give us a really good boost forward in the right direction to proceed towards. It's a lot easier, when you have, because we do have an equipment budget, it's a lot easier when you only need to buy 4 or 5 lengths of hose versus having to buy thousands of feet. So that's why I submitted it as a capital for this year, is to hopefully at least kind of catch up and catch our breath a little bit as we move forward towards figuring out plans to do more.
One other question. How often, other than on mutual aid runs to Sanford, do we actually use the 5-inch?
A lot.
Do we?
Yeah, we use it every fire we have. Pretty much we end up using the 5-inch. So is that the way we're going to go on what we're going to buy? I'm not sure yet, for a couple of reasons, because most fires, even the residential fires, your fire flow is not usually more than about 500 gallons a minute, but which with 4-inch hose you can achieve, and the other issue is that 4-inch hose is about $100 a length cheaper. But we have to sit down with the department and the officers and everybody and just really decide what direction we want to go for sure on that before we make the purchase, because I want to make sure that what we get is right for our operations and what we're planning and where we want to go with it. So.
Okay, so what you're saying is you may end up buying a 4-inch.
I may end up buying 4-inch, correct, yes.
That would make sense.
Get more bang for the buck as far as, lengths, and whatnot, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else?
I have a couple questions.
Let me get on it.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
I'm new at this, so bear with me.
No problem.
On your budget, you have $4,000 for radio repairs.
Yep.
And $5,000 for radios. And you had the same thing in last year's, so.
Yep.
We needed $18,000 in 2 years in radios,
So,
what they are.
yeah, so we've had a lot of repairs to make. We've also been starting to purchase more portable radios. Our stuff that we have now is really getting old. For instance, as well as like radios for the new utility, things like that. They're not cheap. You buy a radio at $500 or $600 a whack. You can only buy so many. We're getting to the point where we need to start replacing more of them as they're getting older. Plus, there was pagers, there's programming, there's install fees, there's a lot of different fees that come out of that, so when you take, say, one radio, replace one radio in a truck, you spend, say $600 on the radio, then you spend another couple $100 on an install, or they come in, for instance, they had to come in because a lot of towns have changed their frequencies, including Sanford. We have to have them come in and do a reprogramming of everything. You can spend $400 or $500 there. It adds up quick is the problem. Radio equipment's expensive, unfortunately. So the answer is yes. We do, obviously, if there's anything left over, we do look at that and see what we need to do with it as far as that goes. Catching up on our portables is going to become one of our priorities. All our portables the batteries are failing. That's the other thing is, like, we've been buying a lot of batteries over the last couple of years as well to replace the batteries because they're just old, and it's like anything, any type of battery, they have a lifespan. So, and it doesn't usually match what the radio will last you. So.
I will ask one.
No, you won't. Arnie, are you done?
Yes.
You get to wait. Carol, you're
Okay,
up.
all right.
I just have a couple questions.
Sure.
One of the things, I was looking at the apparatus replacement plan. And I see that it's based on time.
Yes. Yep.
Is there a reason, like, because I'm thinking this is and tell me if I'm wrong, because it's an assumption, that this is like a standard for all fire departments, that, an ambulance is good for 10 years.
Your assumption is absolutely correct.
Okay.
Actually, most ambulances are replaced after 7. We're just really hoping to get 10.
Okay. So it's not.
So it
It's
can.
not based, because I'm thinking like a town that has, 10 ambulance calls a day versus
Right.
a town that has.
They'll usually
10
replace like
a
every
week.
3 or 4 years, right?
Yeah. Oh, so they would just.
They would just replace that much more frequently. 7 years for smaller towns is reasonable. 10 years is stretching it. But, we take a lot of steps to the preventative maintenance, and we're just really hoping to get the 10 years out of it that way. So that's the plan. That's the fire apparatus, like the engines and things like that. That's a pretty set standard. Is the 25 years for engine type apparatus. In a smaller department that's not as busy as per se like a Sanford or something like that.
Okay.
So, and that's again, as long as you keep up on your preventative maintenance programs, a lot of it has to do with how much we put into them and keep up on them, which we run pretty good programs on those now, so.
The only other question I had, and it's not really, it's a little related to the budget, but, I'm sorry.
Well, hey, at
But
least,
it's about the gym.
Oh, yeah.
Do you guys have space to house the gym over there?
no.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Tom.
One quick question. With respect to the portables, do you distinguish between units that are suitable for use on interior fire, on interior?
They're
or-
all portables
all are-
are designed to be able to use for interior use. And they're also all to be standard, they also have to be intrinsically safe. They have to have all, the microphones that come with them have to be intrinsically safe. I assume everybody knew what that means,
So
right?
you're buying everything, you're buying
Correct.
all the same units?
Yep, everything's all the same and it's all to
Smart, yeah.
standard when we get them, so.
How many people do you have trained, qualified on SCBA?
Oh, I think
I'm going to shoot you,
I
Tom.
know.
I think we're in the ballpark of 27 at this point.
Okay, that's good.
The biggest problem I have with most of your questions, Tom,
Yeah.
sometimes, is they're not pertinent to the
Well,
budget process.
in defense of
Long
Tom,
term, they are. In the short
in
term.
defense of
maybe
Tom, it's very important to
I
understand the
do underst-
department and how it runs, to understand what they need for money.
I understand, capital reserve funds are not Tom's.
We get very little opportunity to meet, it's nice to explain. I welcome it.
And I appreciate it.
Anybody else have any questions?
No.
Thank you.
And I will look into what you mentioned as well. If they're getting haircuts on duty, we're gonna chat.
I got a couple other questions, but I'm not going to,
Come see me and have a coffee. I've been asking you for this for 3 years now. All right, everybody
I might
good?
do that. I might
I'm
do
good.
that. I might.
anybody else? Anybody from the floor?
All right.
I have a comment.
Uh-oh.
When you people look at the overall budget of the town, this department, and just because I'm on this department, I'm not, has the school ever got a flat line? Or I know they only went up 1.1% this year,
Less than
but the school has everything they need. I know back years ago, we only had a 4-room building. Yes, we needed a new room. We need a new school. But now they have everything that they need. I think you guys need to look at the overall budget, flatline the school, and give it to the road people, the rec people, and the fire department. The selectmen had cut, I don't know, $60,000 out of our budget of what we wanted capital improvement to get us up to where we needed to be standard. I think the school, I had kids go through the school. I understand the kids thing, but the school right now has everything they need. They do not need to go up. The selectmen had to find $100,000 to keep our taxes straight They took our capital improvement rate, you know, the school just goes, just whatever they want. Yeah, you can have it, yeah, you can have it. I just want to know, wait a minute, I'm not done talking. They have never, that I know of, and I've been on this department for 11, well, since I was 11, I was the first junior. We have always held the line back when Father Pete, Harold, Little Pete was chief. Oh, you gotta hold the line, you gotta hold the line, you gotta hold the line because of the school, because of the school. Okay, now we're at the point where we need stuff for our department, the rec needs stuff. I think the school needs to hold the line and let some of these other departments in town get their ducks up and where they need to be. That's my comment.
I'm not disagreeing, Robin, not in the least. The roads need a bunch of money.
Absolutely.
Okay? The rec committee, you know, they
Yeah.
can use some money.
Yep.
Fire department, you know, how much money do they need? Yeah, I'm not gonna argue that point, you know. Do we, you know,
But-
does the school need to not flatline? There's only one problem with trying to carve anything out of the school. The school has such, and I'm not saying that the
Yeah.
fire department doesn't have it, but the school has such support in this town.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, that if you were trying to carve anything out of the school budget, you'd just about sooner cut your arm off.
Well,
You
you know,
understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you, Roland, but
I'm
I
not
think
disagreeing
as.
with what you're saying. You know, the roads definitely need some more damn money.
Absolutely,
okay?
correct. Yep.
You know, without a doubt. We have so many roads in this town that are in absolutely horrible shape.
Yeah, absolutely.
And throwing Band-Aids on a stretch of road by doing a shim coat on it is,
Correct.
pardon my
Yep,
French,
Yeah, absolutely.
but that's just who I am. You know?
But, you know, one article at the school, I was at the school meeting, one article, we raised and appropriated 1 odd million. You don't think we could have take 15 or 20 or 10 or $15,000 out of that account and give it to rec, roads, fire, wherever? I think 1.1 million out of one account, taking $15,000 or $20,000 out of it would not hurt our kids at all.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
I-
We made our recommendations as far as, you
You
know,
know,
the school
you
budget.
people need to stick up for us, the selectmen needs to stick up for us, or for the whole town, and not concentrate on our kids that don't, you know, yes, you know, we got special needs and all that stuff, but I think we, as a group of us, as town people, need to look at the big picture. Where are we going with this? You know, our school budget is what, 6 odd million? Come on now.
If I may, Robin, I
Yeah.
just want to be clear. The Warrant and Finance Committee never asked the selectmen to cut $100,000 out of the budget.
Right.
They never asked that. What they asked the Warrant Finance was, would you support a 15 to 30%
Yeah,
increase?
13 to
And-
35
And
cents.
I said no. And my rationale for that was that you could accomplish the same thing and add more money, for example, $100,000 into the road budget, taking a closer look at your revenues and tightening that up, and you could accomplish the same thing. And with the money that's in the undesignated fund balance, and I realize how all that works, and it's all, some of it's unpaid taxes and things like that, I think the selectmen can take a closer look at the revenues. We don't have to have the amount of money in the fund balance that we have. It's recommended.
correct.
I don't like borrowing money, as Tom could tell you. Years ago, they borrowed money twice a year, every year, to pay our bills. So it's a different thought process. But I just want to be very clear, the Warrant Finance Committee never asked the selectmen to cut $100,000 out of the budget.
And like I said, I pay taxes just like anybody else does. I don't want my taxes to go up. But being on a fire and rescue, we have to make, and we have to have the equipment that we need when we need it. It ain't like the school, oh, we can budget this, and we got all year to figure it out. Fire department, we have to act on seconds. It's life and death for our elderly people, our young people, our citizens. We have to be ready constantly. It's not like the school, where they have all year to figure it out. We, as a department, only have seconds to save somebody's life. Just 2 weekends ago, I was on 2 codes, and it was not good. We need the equipment to have this town run efficiently and everything. I'm done with that. You know how I feel. So we need to have a better handle on what, I know everybody might be against the chief, don't like the chief. There's some people that don't like him, but I'll tell you what.
That's okay, buddy.
I'll tell you what. He's been very good to the department. He has to worry about citizens, you guys, and he also has to worry about us under him. He's done a tremendous job.
I understand what you're saying, Rob.
Thank you, Robin.
Mr. Chairman?
Have a great, yes, what?
I make an observation. I classify the departments we have in town into 2 groups, the do departments and the don't do departments, the support departments. We have 3 do departments, the roads, the schools, and the fire department. Those are the people who actually serve the public. They all get good support from the public, okay?
Some better than others.
Well, all of them get good support, I think. They need the opportunity to demonstrate that support, and that's where the problem has been in the 2 departments that are due departments, but haven't had that support over the past few years. Although I have to say that the fire department has gotten more support than the road people do, or have. But
It's a
we'll leave it
tough
at that.
It's a tough battle, and everybody's got a
Shouldn't be
tough
as
job to
tough.
do.
The fact is, there was $200,000 that I can point to right now that should have been available, but I won't say any more about that.
Well, thank you for your work. My members are passionate, and I admire that.
And that's fine.
And Robin is certainly one of the best ones, so. But anyways, thank you for your work and your time.
Thank you.
All right.
We have nothing else to discuss this evening.
I just
So,
want to
entrance-
remind.
I just wanted to clarify one
everybody
thing.
that our next meeting on Monday is for the road budgets. So really look at your books and, have your questions ready.
I just wanted to clarify the roads budget did go up. Was that 2017? The rates for the equipment and the labor rates went up 10 to 20%, along with their maintenance line for summer to go with that. And this year, the winter maintenance is going up 15%, so we are trying.
The roads do still need a lot of money.
We're trying.
It's not about,
It takes time, I understand
say
that.
that. I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.